Hi, Andrew Cuneo here with another Alchemy video. This time I'm going to be going back and taking another look at the deck that's been the strongest for me, which is Esper Control. I know if you look at the tournament results on MTG Melee, there's been a lot of Dragons decks. There's been a decent amount of mono green decks that have done well. The blue control decks haven't done particularly well. I don't really think that people are playing very good builds of blue control. I really don't think that the red Dragons deck should be a hard matchup for a blue deck at all. Also, there's a fair amount of black or black-white sacrifice decks built around Sanguine Brushstroke. I think that's another matchup where if you construct your blue deck correctly, you should be able to be favored there. The one matchup that's given me a hard time with this deck is the more aggressive Werewolves decks. So I'm going to go over some of the changes I've made to my deck to try and make it stronger overall. I did do a video on this deck previously where I went over each card choice, and I'll leave a link to that if you want to go back and watch it. But primarily what I've done is I've tried to make my deck better against the Werewolves deck, better against Dragons decks, just better against the decks I'm expecting overall. So one of the changes I made is I used to have Path of Peril in my main deck, which is, I can pull it up here. It's a sweeper that primarily you're going to kill 2 CMC or less creatures with it, but you can also, for 6 mana, kill everything. And that was just too slow against the aggressive werewolf decks, because so many of their good cards cost 3 mana or more that you'd have to get the 6 mana before Path of Peril was doing what you wanted. In its place, I'm playing Parasitic Grasp. Parasitic Grasp is really great against specifically the Werewolves decks because so many of their creatures are humans, at least on the front side, and the gaining 3 life matters a ton. So I've got 2 of those in my main deck and another 2 in the sideboard for that matchup. Gone are the Path of Perils entirely. There didn't seem to be a matchup where that card particularly shined. I think White Weenie has fallen off tremendously, so I don't have any sweepers dedicated for that matchup anymore. I don't have a Shadow's Verdict in my main deck anymore. I just have 2 Meathook Massacres. That's primarily because having one Meathook Massacre in play against the Black Sack decks is going to offset 1 Blood Artist or give you some life gain that's going to help you fight the drain effects of the Sanguine Brushstroke. Same thing with Parasitic Grasp. Against that black deck, as long as you can gain some life, which I've got Meathook Massacre, I've got Parasitic Grasp, I've got the Celestus, I've got Teferi who slows the sunset, I've got Environmental Sciences, which you can maybe cast twice because of Lier. As long as you have some life gain, that deck is not going to kill you that fast, so your card advantage should be able to take over. One other change I made to the main deck was I just wanted an additional 2 mana removal spell, and I went with Infernal Grasp. Infernal Grasp is nice because it hits Eye Tyrant out of the Dragons deck, or Goldspan Dragon, any other dragons it's going to be hitting. And it can also kill the 2 and 3 drops out of the Werewolves decks. To make room for that, I cut one of my blue card drawing spells. I had been playing a second Unexpected Conversion in my main deck, and I thought I had too many card draw spells and not enough cheap creatures to keep up with the more aggressive creature decks. So to make up for that, in the blue matchups, I've got a Memory Deluge I can board in now. In the past, I think that was basically a sweeper of some kind that I decided I didn't need. The other change I made is I used to play 3 Duresses in the main deck. I just have a main deck Disdainful Stroke to go along with 2 Duresses. Disdainful Stroke's really the best answer to Eye Tyrant. And pretty much all of the decks play some form of 4 mana card, so you're always going to be able to counter something out of their decks. It might not be the best card. It might be a card you want to board out in a matchup. But it is a card that is going to have a use, I think, in basically every matchup you can expect. Beyond that, I think the deck is basically the same. One thing I did want to say about playing with Parasitic Grasp and Lier is that the way Cleave interacts with Lier is pretty awkward. because Cleave is an alternate cost and Flashback is an alternate cost, you can only pay one alternate cost, which means that if you're trying to play a Parasitic Grasp from your graveyard with Lier, you can only target human creatures. So you're not always going to be able to kill what you want. One play you can always make is you can always just Parasitic Grasp your own Lier if you just want to gain 3 life, and you don't really care about putting 3 damage on the Lier. So there's always some ability to use Parasitic Grasp. You can always just obviously drain a human for 3. That works fine. Another thing about Lier that can be awkward if you're playing with a counter like Disdainful Stroke in your main deck, also you can get counterspell off Key to the Archive, is Lier makes things uncounterable, but remember that you can make a play where if you have Disdainful Stroke and Fading Hope or Divide by 0 in your graveyard, by going into full control, you can Disdainful Stroke a spell, and while the Disdainful Stroke is still on the stack, because you have full control, you're going to respond to your Disdainful Stroke by bouncing your Lier. Then the Lier will no longer be in play, meaning that the spell on the stack is still counterable, so your Disdainful Stroke will work. Same thing with the counterspell if you happen to get counterspell off Key to the Archive. So that is a play that doesn't come up very often, but it will come up occasionally, and it is a really good play in the right spot. So that's the deck as I've updated it. And like I said, if I had to play a tournament right now, this would be my choice for deck to play. So let's play a few matches on the ladder and see how it goes. All right, this is a good hand. One problem with playing 3 colors is it oftentimes makes your turn 2 a little bit awkward because of the lands. I think I'm just going to play Jwari Disruption to start. Means I'm very unlikely to be able to cast either of these cards on turn 2. But I wouldn't have been able to cast them anyway. I could have maybe played a land that would have made it so if I drew a Pathway, I could actually cast a spell on turn 2. But I think I was so likely to want to have the Jwari Disruption in play as a land anyway, it wasn't really worth it. I think I'm just going to ignore this mostly. I would say the key to winning this style of matchup is you really want to be able to get Key to the Archive into play quickly and then just get a mana advantage. Because once you get to the point where you're able to get some of your card drawing online and start casting multiple spells in a turn, you're in really good shape. Their deck has a hard time keeping up. I might play a Lolth here, which would be pretty awkward for me. I don't really have that many good answers to... like, I can obviously get the Lolth off the board, but the tokens are kind of annoying. Rite of Oblivion's a pretty good card for them to have there. It's less scary than a Lolth would have been, but it is somewhat decent. So they've got a Lolth, they've got a bunch of wedding announcements. Sanguine Verse is quite good against wedding announcement. I think I'll just go ahead and get rid of the Lolth. I think that's actually the scariest card for me. Oh, this isn't a human, so I'm not going to Parasitic Grasp this turn because I want to make sure I can play one of my other spells. Don't really understand why did they choose to do that. They drew a land. Their play didn't make any sense, I don't think. Not all that likely to get to Jwari Disruption something, but I also don't really need this in play as a land. My most expensive card is 6 mana. I don't really care about the Brushstroke all that much. I will go ahead and grasp the Blood Artist, though. I want to Vanishing Verse these wedding announcements the turn they come into play so that they don't get any value off of them. In the sideboarded games, it's nice to board in some go blanks. I think they make the Rite of Oblivion much more manageable. They're only getting to cast one side of it, or half of it. It's way better for me. Another Brushstroke. Like I said, I've gained, I guess, 6 life off of the Parasitic Grasps this game, and I took some damage from the Professor of Symbology while getting to a point where I wanted to cast the Parasitic Grasp. But as long as you're gaining some life, like I'm at 20 life, they're never going to make enough blood that it's really going to be scary for me to that they're going to drain me out from the Brushstrokes. Yes. I will just play this Vanishing Verse in their pre-combat main phase to make sure I don't misclick and miss it and give them a free token by accident. I'm going to hold this land in my hand. I might want to discard it to a Key to the Archive, which they do have Rite of Oblivion, so the Key to the Archive is probably not going to stay in play. But I could get Counterspell or Demonic Tutor off of it. So it's probably worth casting. This thing I'm going to Vanishing Verse just so they don't go and get Meathook Massacre. Hopefully they don't have a Deadly Dispute. They probably should have sacked their blood to just try to find a Deadly Dispute there. I guess I can play this on 1. They've gotten to do a fair amount of draining, and I'm still going to wind up at a healthy life total. They can probably get me down to 12 here, maybe. I didn't do the math, because it's not going to wind up being all that close to me being dead. I guess I'm going to wind up at 13. And obviously they've gained a bunch of life, but that really doesn't matter at all. One nice thing to bear in mind when you're playing with Meathook Massacre in this deck is that you can divide by 0 it to recast it. An Eye Twitch. That is going to be another target for a Vanishing Verse. I drew a lot of Vanishing Verses this game. Wow, they don't even want to give me the chance to Vanishing Verse it. This is a good play by the opponent. Getting Introduction to Prophecy, I do not think is a good decision. They have to have Meathook or a Mascot Exhibition in their sideboard, right? I guess they think I probably have another sweeper in my hand. I'm going to go ahead and clear this Rite of Oblivion out of their graveyard while I can. Disdainful Stroke actually protects me from a lot of the scarier things they could have. I think they've drawn 3 Deadly Disputes now. Maybe it's only 2. There's the Mascot Exhibition. As it turned out, I would have gotten to Disdainful Stroke, the Mascot Exhibition anyway. I think I'm going to kill this. My life total is low enough that I don't want to take a ton more free damage. I don't really want to be in a position where I'm trying to use the Hive of the Eye Tyrant to block, given that this is game 1 against a black deck. They're going to have Vanishing Verses in their deck, probably. Definitely want to counter this one. I still haven't drawn a single card drawing card, which I don't have that many left in my deck, or I don't have that many in my main deck anymore, but this matchup is basically just trying to stall until you draw some card drawing. I'll just fire this off now. See what they've got in their hand. I guess I could have just... I missed 3 free damage there. That's the end of their deadly disputes. That's kind of nice. Legion Angel. That is fairly annoying. If it had been Edgar they had drawn, it would have been in way better shape. Just going to do this to save a little bit of damage. I don't mind making a land drop here. That's part of the reason I'm playing. Consider what I am. Obviously next turn I'm going to be playing Lier and trying to get a lot of value off the Lier. I might not be able to keep it in play. We'll see. It's nice that I'm getting to make this play. And I think they actually started by playing a land. Yeah, they played a Forsaken Crossroads to start their turn, which really sets them back. I could also... I could just divide the Meathook Massacre and replay it. If I play Lier, I play 2 removal spells. That's probably better. Play Lier, play 2 Vanishing Verses. And then I have double Fading Hope to keep Lier around. Probably should have tapped a little bit more carefully. I guess I can Duress them too. So they can't get the Lier off the board this turn at least because they only have sorcery speed removal, and I've got 2 Fading Hopes in my graveyard. This is one of those spots where Parasitic Grasp is a little bit awkward because they don't really have any human targets. If I need to, I can gain 3 life by grasping my own Lier at some point. I don't think this game is going to come down to that. I think they're about done. It isn't even really that important, honestly, whether or not this Lier lives or dies. I'll keep it alive through the Rite of Oblivion with, I think, Divide by 0. Assuming that they start their turn by trying to Rite of Oblivion the Lier. They're Rite of Oblivioning the Teferi. I'm just going to let that go. So that they can't Rite of Oblivion the Lier for free. You can just divide this and leave the Lier in play. I think I like doing that better. Do I think I'm going to want to gain more life? Maybe. They get to rob my graveyard of a card. Would they take a Vanishing Verse, probably? I didn't really see in time. Just take Lightning Bolt. I can actually cast it this turn off the Celestus. Let's discard Environmental Sciences. It's an Eye Twitch. They've already used a lot of their lessons. They already used the Mascot Exhibition. They might have some, like, Reduced to Ashes, maybe is the name of the card. One of those cards that allows them to attempt to kill Lier. It's not a very effective way to kill Lier, so I'm not too worried about it. Keep that in case anything goes wrong. And here I'll just do this just to show that this is all I can do, is I can shoot my own Lier for 3. Still get 3 life out of it. It's not the worst. That's probably fine. I won't give them the option of getting whatever their next best lesson is. Hagra Mauling. I could have done the play where I Disdainful Stroke it and then bounce my Lier, but obviously that is just worse than just bouncing the Lier. There's no reason to use the Disdainful Stroke if you're already bouncing the Lier. It's a Shambling Ghast. Alright. This one's as over as a game could be, I would say. Doesn't really matter all that much what decisions I'm making right now. Basically just need to make sure I don't deck myself, and I'll be fine. I still have a Mascot Exhibition in my sideboard that I can go and get whenever I need to. Maybe I should just do that this turn. So I've left myself access to Divide by Zero and a Fading Hope from my graveyard. And there, no, I don't have any more Fading Hopes. I just have a Divide by Zero, keeping my Lier safe. But they're playing empty-handed, so there's nothing they can even do. I'm not going to loot just because I don't want to make my deck any smaller than it is. Their only hope, I think, at this point is to deck me, which is not really something that's going to happen. Here I am going to play the second Mascot Exhibition. You might be thinking, what if they top deck Meathook Massacre? Wouldn't that be bad for me? If they do, I'm going to Disdainful Stroke it, and then in response, Divide by Zero my Lier. I've been saving this D-Spark all game. Let's use it. Wow, look at that. Bang. Gain some more life. I'll kill one of these. They do have Snowlands in their deck, so they might have Blood on the Snow. Blood on the Snow would be functionally the same thing as them having Meathook Massacre. I guess we'll grasp this. Might have enough damage to just kill them with double bolt this turn. Probably don't even need it. Alright, sideboarding against this deck. Obviously, Parasitic Grasp is not very good. I did use it to gain some life, but it's really not what you want. Do I want Fracture? They do have all the wedding announcements in addition to Lolth and Sanguine Brushstroke. You don't really want to have to destroy Sanguine Brushstroke. The card I'm most interested in, I would say, is Go Blank. And I definitely want more blue card drawing, so I'm going to want Memory Deluge. I think Fracture's fine. I'm going to leave one Fading Hope in my deck, but it takes a long time for the game to get to the point where Fading Hope is a good card. I think I'll just play with Hullbreaker Horror. This is a card that once we get to later on in the game, it's very hard for their deck to beat. I definitely want the go blanks because in addition to just clearing out whatever removal spells they have in their hand, exiling their graveyard's pretty nice because of Rite of Oblivion. And I'm going to leave Disdainful Stroke in my deck. Is that right? I think Disdainful Stroke's probably just worse than Duress. So as you can see, I could have my sideboard be even more hateful to this deck if I wanted. Like I could have Negate in my sideboard, say. Or just more card drawing cards in my sideboard. But I don't even think you need it. I think this is such an easy matchup that I just wouldn't worry about it specifically too much in sideboarding. Either way, I chose to sequence my lands. Well, I couldn't play the Pathway on the first turn if I wanted to have access to playing a Vanishing Verse on turn 2. I didn't draw a Vanishing Verse. Duress is nice, though, because I do want to prevent them from getting a wedding announcement into play if I can. It didn't work. They drew it off the top of their deck. Alright, now this game's going to maybe get a little hard. What's the plan? Guess I'm just going to divide by 0 the wedding announcement. Hopefully they play the Professor's Symbology. Nope. They must have Vanishing Verse or Deadly Dispute in their hand if they're getting priority here. Alright, that's fine. It does make my Jwari Disruption useless. Do I want to draw 2 cards or find a land? I think I just want to draw 2 cards. I have 6 in hand, so we can just do this. That actually might have been a good turn to just play Teferi. They have the Rite of Oblivion to get rid of the Teferi, but it requires a pretty big investment from them to do that play. Yeah, this is turned into a mess because they top decked that wedding announcement, that 1 turn window. It's not completely over, but it's not looking very good. Need to find a sweeper. I could have bottomed the Vanishing Verse to make it more likely to find a Meathook Massacre, but I kind of need the Vanishing Verse in addition to finding the sweeper to get back into the game.
Nothing on Innistrad is free.
Well, that's what the game looks like when things spiral out of control. Do I want Disdainful Stroke if I know they have Sorin as well? And they didn't really play any discard spells. I think I still like Duress. Oftentimes, Disdainful Stroke's not a very good counter against black decks just because they wind up duressing you. And they get to know you have the Disdainful Stroke and they don't even really have to take it. So there's no land sequencing I can play that leaves me access to a turn 2 Vanishing Verse. I guess I'll start with the Shipwreck Marsh. It doesn't really matter having access to a turn 2 Vanishing Verse so much in the games when I'm on the play. It matters a lot more on the draw. Just going to sit on Divide by 0, is that right? Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. Rather than play the Celestus. They don't have access to the turn 3 Loth play because it's an Eye Twitch and not a Shambling Ghast, but still they could play Wedding Announcement. Given the fact that my hand is a bunch of card drawing spells, I think I'm fine if we both just do nothing on turn 3. And I get to my card drawing spells more cleanly. This is the kind of start that obviously I want them to have in the game. The problematic spots are where they chain together a bunch of these annoying permanents for me. Should I just let them have that? And get to cast a Divide by 0? I think I'm going to actually. Or get to cast a Memory Deluge, rather. I think I just won land. It's not the worst thing in the world to have happened to me. I've got 6 cards. So I can't get to the 3 or more cards part of this card. Let's just play Meathook for 1 this turn. It denies them drawing a card off the Wedding Announcement. It's not even a Planeswalker yet. It's just Sanguine Brushstroke. I thought they might have boarded this card out. This card is not very good in this matchup. My Celestus. You've ruined it. It's a little bit scary. This is going to kill me. 2 swings, potentially. Probably not really, though. Need them to not have a 7th land this turn. Actually, I'm fine even if they do. That should be enough to win now. But let's see what they do. More Shambling Ghasts. The more the merrier. I don't know why they did that in response. That really didn't make much sense. You can gain 2 life. Nah, that's not worth it. I have access to the cheap Divide by 0 plus a Vanishing Verse as long as I don't spend my mana. Yes, I should let him. That didn't matter. Cheap Divide by 0 is a very nice card. This deck is very slow to play. I consider myself a fast player, but it does seem like the games, I frequently fall behind on time. All right. So 2 easy games and 1 game that I got crushed. That's That's one of those matchups where I don't think it's a close matchup. I think it's a good matchup for blue. But the games where you lose, it's going to look really bad because it's just going to spiral out of control too fast for you. This is not a great hand, obviously, but I just really need... If I draw any one land, I'll get access to Divide, which will give me access to Environmental Sciences, which will mean that the rest of my hand will come online. Looks like I'm playing basically the same matchup, and my draw has been terrible. Oh, maybe things are looking up a little. All right, that's certainly fine. Deadly Dispute. Please don't have Deadly Dispute. I don't think I can beat Mascot Exhibition this game. Maybe I can if I draw a land. My Key to the Archive finds Day of Judgment. And they don't have Rite of Oblivion. None of those things happened. I'm going to sideboard the same exact way. I can remember what it was. It's that minus Disdainful Stroke. Another hand that's short on land. I really hate mulliganing these kind of matchups where the game's going to go on forever and it's just going to be a battle of resources, just starting down. The card is really miserable. I'm just going to trust in my deck to draw. If I can draw 2 lands in like my first 4 cards, I think this is still a game I could win pretty easily. Especially if one of the lands is a black land. Kind of rooting to be duressed here. My hand is pretty duress proof. Oh, it's Cursebound Witch. Alright. It's a pretty nice land to draw. Definitely don't want to draw that one. See if they have Rite of Oblivion. They have Wedding Announcement, Go Blank, Deadly Dispute. I could take the Deadly Dispute and hope they just don't draw a land. Problem is if they draw a land, things really get out of control with the Wedding Announcement. Are they using all their treasures this turn? least one of their treasures. They only have one unknown card and one card they're about to draw there. So I think that pretty likely to have the Key to the Archive sit in play. Wouldn't be shocked to be hit by Go Blank here. If they cast Go Blank, I'm going to discard Electrolyze in one of my Memory Deluges, and then I'll just untap and cast Discover the Formula almost definitely. It's Sorin the Mirthless. So I think I want to Memory Deluge, find an untapped land, Electrolyze this. There's a little bit of risk of whiffing on a land. It's not really that substantial though. I just want 2 lands. Or maybe land Consider. I definitely don't want the other Discover the Formula. Probably land Consider. Now if they go blank me, I'm going to discard Key plus Consider. So they have lethal now if I take into account that they can Fellstinger me. I guess they can't both Fellstinger me and hit me with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant, so they don't exactly have lethal. I think I'm going to start with Discover the Formula. They're going to attack me with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant this turn, which I think they probably should. Maybe they could have some great card in their hand to cast instead. But if this is going to happen, they 100% made a horrific mistake by playing a land first. You can get the Discover out of the Formula out of my graveyard. If in exchange I get to not get Deadly Disputed here. Do I want this Lier? Not right now. The card I want is 100% Meathook Massacre. That was exciting. Still in a lot of trouble. Even have the unwilling ingredient. How do I get out of this? I like to get a back above 2 life, just in case they have more Fellstingers in their deck. They have a lot of unwilling ingredients. I think next turn will be the turn I turn the corner. They have a lot of cards in their hand now. But I'm going to have access to a lot of Divide by Zeros and Hullbreaker Horror triggers. I messed up. I 100% needed to cast Consider first. I drawn any Vanishing Verses this game. I drew 1. Soren the Merciless.
You deal with this annoyance.
Hooray! A card that does something. So if I go Hullbreaker Horror, Meathook Massacre for 3, bounce the Sorin, I have Jwari Disruption, which ain't much, but it's not nothing. A Skyclave Shade, wow. Haven't seen one of those in a while. Come on, go blank. Do I already have a go blank in my graveyard? I do not. They have a go blank. Annoying. Okay. I have a pretty healthy clock. Not too worried about losing my Lier in my graveyard. I guess I had enough cards left in my deck I could have afforded to loot, but didn't matter. This is the best starting hand I've had so far. I'm going to go for the turn 1 Duress, just in case they have Deadly Dispute. Also, it looks like, did they mulligan? I think they mulliganed once. Just want my 4th land. Vanishing Verse would also be nice. I got rid of their Cauldron Familiar. That was maybe a mistake. I maybe should have just played Consider. Hope to hit a Vanishing Verse or a land. If I brick this turn... Yeah, kind of messed up. This is on blue. That Fell Stinger really made a huge difference this game. What are they tanking on for so long? I am lucky. I guess I don't need the land, but I think I want the land. Against their build, I maybe should have had a third sweeper in my deck, meaning the Shadow's Verdict. So they have so many cheap guys in their deck after sideboarding. It's a frog-based beatdown. Could have been a little bit dodgy if they had Vanishing Verse. Seems like they just have a bunch of reactive cards, like Rite of Oblivion in their hand. No, there's a Vanishing. There's a wedding announcement at least. Well, those are the matchups I got on the ladder. It was the same deck twice. I think I'm just going to leave it there, though. That gives a pretty good glimpse into how I approach playing that matchup. And like I said, I think it's a good matchup. It is it's Alchemy, so it's basically standard. Any deck can beat any other deck. But I think that as an Esper deck with Vanishing Verse, with the card drawing, you're pretty clearly advantaged against the slower black decks. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I want to thank everybody who's been subbing to the channel and commenting on the videos. It is helping the channel to grow, and I'm finding it pretty encouraging. So thanks, and keep leaving comments.